So I'm very proud of what we've done here, and we have obviously phenomenal deputies. We have great relationships in Orange County with the municipal agencies. When you look at training, we train at the same level across the country. There's a reason why when we had the incident last year in Trabuco Canyon at Cook's Corner, but our response was because we trained them on how to handle these things over time.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Make More with Matt Heslin Podcast. I'm here with a good friend of mine today. I'm here to share a friend's intellect and insight with you that's going to be profound. I want to introduce my good friend and Sheriff of Orange County, Don Barnes. Don, good morning.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you coming down. How's your summer unfolding?
Hot. It's been very, very hot, and we just got back from visiting our kids in Texas. It's much hotter there than it is here. Let me just put my phone on silent. I'm sorry I didn't do that. The only difference is there it's almost triple digit with almost triple digit humidity, so it's a little different. It's nice coming back to Orange County where it's a cool high 90s or low 90s, high 80s, and but it's been a good summer. But it's been very busy as well around the work environment. The issues going into the election, the risks are profound on any given day, but it's really magnified right now because of the election cycle that we're in.
Well, you happen to have the best job as law enforcement goes. Best weather, best. You know, it's really interesting, Don. I was thinking about you the other day because as I was driving home, I'm like, Orange County just feels safe. It feels safe as a consumer of public services, as a resident. You cross the L.A. Orange County line. You immediately know you're behind the orange curtain, and law enforcement has your back. I mean, you've got 4,000 deputies, right?
4,000 total personnel, 800 volunteers. About half of those are deputies, a little over 2,000 deputy sheriffs, and we patrol for almost about 837,000 residents get their patrol, policing patrol from the Sheriff's Department. 3.2 million residents in Orange County. It's the sixth largest
nationally,
county.
what is it?
The sixth largest county in the nation. And if you look at the Southern California region, between LA, Riverside, San Bernardino, San Diego, and Orange County, those are comprised of some of the largest, not only in land mass, but in population, largest counties in the nation. It comprises the Southern California area.
Well, one of the things that this podcast does is it brings in some of the most interesting people, and then we get to drill down and extract from them all their intellect and wisdom. And the consumers of the show love this stuff. So I figured you'd be like one of the more interesting guys.
Well, I hope I don't disappoint you.
You never do. Oh, by the way, how's Marilyn doing?
My wife is great. We are new grandparents. Our daughter gave us a grandson back in February, and we are ecstatic. Watching him develop has been a lot of fun. And they live in the great state of Texas, like many have migrated out of California and planted roots there. And
is he in law enforcement?
No, he's not. Yeah, my son-in-law owns his own business. He is a contractor and does development and home improvement projects for the community. Wow. My daughter works in medical devices for a major national company, and she's in the operating room technical advisor on medical devices.
Wow.
My son, who lives out there also, about 2 minutes from my daughter, they were literally across the country road from each other. He is a computer coder. He writes code. Yes.
All successful kids.
I'm very proud of them. They do good.
You should be. Yeah. I wanted to see if you couldn't give the listeners and the viewers a little bit of a reflection on your career path, kind of when you started, how you got to where you are today, and kind of what your priorities are today.
Wow, I started in the late 80s in this profession. I actually was in mortgage banking, real estate lending before.
Really?
And back in the 1980, I think it was 88, I'm going to memory, that Black Monday that happened October 87. October of 87. Yeah. And that profession I was in, keep in mind, I started when interest rates were coming down from 19.5%. So people today talking about interest rates.
Whining at 7.
Yeah, people have gotten spoiled, but that is, we weren't it wasn't that long ago that we were at 7.5%, probably about a decade or so plus.
Yeah.
But when money gets to be free, there's a problem with that. And relatively, almost at 3.5%, that's pretty cheap money.
It's free.
But that happened, and I wanted a different profession, and I had friends that worked in this profession, the policing profession, and I made the change. I told people that I wanted a less stressful job, so I left mortgage banking into
Yeah, right.
law enforcement, policing. So I started back in 1989. I specifically wanted to work for the Orange County Sheriff's Department. I had friends that worked here, and I liked the diverse assignments they had and the size of the agency and the opportunities it presented that have grown significantly over the last 3.5 decades since I've been with the organization compared to where it was back then. So I started as a deputy sheriff. In many ways, the circle of life for us, you start in the jail, you go to patrol operations, did that. Was a field training officer, had a lot of fun. My probably the most fun I ever had was working in patrol just because of the interactions with people and the service.
Do you still go out on the beat and drive with the guys at times?
Well, when Marilyn leaves me and goes to visit our kids, I oftentimes will tell her, I'm going to go with the deputies and go on a ride. And she will say, you think that's a good idea, but they will not have fun. They will not enjoy it. So I have not done that yet, but I do make my way around the department and see the personnel that we have. It's typical. It's leadership. It's Lincoln on leadership, right?
So you're a very motivating individual. I would imagine for the right guy would not be intimidated because you're obviously very successful. You're very smart. I mean, probably with the smartest sheriff we've ever had, and I know a lot of them that we've had. You're finance driven. You're budget driven. You're smart. You run a good operation, which is I do want to touch on that as a business. How you run the business as a business in the governmental entity. But, I mean, looking at you, I mean, you're so successful, I would imagine the guys would be excited to ride with you.
Well, first of all, thank you. It's very kind, but I will tell you, success is not based on any one individual. It's a team sport. And I use this analogy of team, and I make references to football and other sports about what we do. And I'll tell the story this way. I'm almost always in uniform. I rarely am not in uniform. If I'm not wearing uniform, it's because I'm doing something political at some point that day, and I can't be in uniform for that purpose. Okay. But during COVID and all the protests that happened after George Floyd, we had over 80 protests that the Sheriff's Department responded to. Some turned into civil unrest. But the members of the public would see me, recognize me, come up, and they would say something kind. Sheriff, you're doing a great job. I'm paraphrasing. And my response is always the same. Thank you. I'm blessed to have a great team. And I explain that to my team is that this isn't singles tennis. There isn't any one individual that makes this happen. It's a team sport. We all move the ball. Occasionally, we're going to fumble like any profession. Well, we hire from the human race, and people make mistakes, and sometimes they make mistakes that are deliberate and intentional. And I have zero tolerance for those people. They don't get to work here anymore. I will get rid of them. But you strive to do better. I think you made the reference of this is a business. We are in the business of providing the public's safety.
Yeah.
And I look at this as a business. I rerun our budget as if it's a business, and we have limited dollars that are made available to us to invest in providing services and programs to the public. And I look at ROI, return on investment. If that isn't working, if we're doing something that's not giving us the outcome that we're hoping for, not an output. An output is just a process of doing something. The outcome is what you're hoping to accomplish through that service delivery. And if that's not happening, we will stop. We will reinvest those dollars somewhere else or save them. I'll cover maybe a little bit later in one of our new buildings we just opened up that we actually found our own capacity within our budget to go out and buy a building by just changing the way we do our IT. I run my own information technology division. Wow. And by the way we contract out services, we started to migrate onto a singular platform, software as a service, that actually gave us the savings that we could then reinvest in purchasing a building that we needed.
Awesome.
So in a way, we almost got the building for free because we found the savings within our budget. And municipal budgets aren't the same, just for your listeners. It's not the same as a business where you're operating off of income. You can increase your income, you can strive to, or you can reduce your costs. Municipal budgets are done completely different. It's done with the intent of providing service delivery, expending dollars from revenue to provide services for the public. There's no brownie points for saving money if you're not delivering services.
So there's no brownie points for coming in below budget.
Well, you strive to make sure that you're delivering the services that you hope to, and there is a purpose for every program, obviously. And I don't have enough money, by the way, to make sure. Thank you so much. I don't have enough money in my budget to do everything that we want to do. There is a lot of unfunded projects that we have within the Sheriff's Department, and that's probably true of most government.
You know, we are so lucky to have you, and I mean this in the most respectful way, because you have an undergrad in business, you have a master's in public administration.
Yes.
And then, you know, looking through your bio, all the FBI training and certifications, and I mean, you've got to be one of the most educated, forward-thinking sheriffs in the country. I mean, we are so lucky to have you. And you know what? I drive by your guys every morning on Ortega Highway. Hi, guys. and I stop in and see if I can't buy them coffee. They never let me buy them coffee. They never let me buy them a treat or anything. But we're so appreciative of the job that they do, because the Ortega Highway is so busy. It's got so many people. They're driving so damn fast that when they pull them over and they nail them, I can pull them up. Yes, yeah.
I'm not sure everybody feels that way, but
I'm sure they don't.
I will tell you, it's interesting that you brought that up about the people I'm privileged to work with every day, and they make me very proud. But when you look at what we're hoping to accomplish in service delivery and reputation and brand, and we do everything that a Fortune 500 company or anybody that's running a business would do. Yeah. And there's a lot of ways that you have to look at this as a business and how you make sure that you set yourself up for success. But specifically, when I talk to our team, and I think people who follow industry hopefully can appreciate this, is I want to be the Nordstroms of law enforcement. I want to be a high brand recognition. When people think of a policing agency, they're thinking of, and they think of the sheriff's department, they think high quality service, great delivery, great outcome. Some of the safest communities in the United States are patrolled by the Orange County Sheriff's Department. And there's a lot of things that go into that, the socioeconomics of the areas and other things, but it doesn't happen by accident. You can't have that happen without the input of the deputies and the job that they do and the leadership and the environment we create for them to be successful. There are many things that go into that equation that hopefully lead you to success. And then we have other things we've invested in as well we could probably do this podcast for 3 hours because there's just so much going on that we can talk about.
We've only booked it for 4. So. Hey, so I've got a question for you. AI, I'm going to bounce all over the place because I have so many questions for you. Does AI have a place in law enforcement that you can see looking forward that would help prevent crime or solve crime?
Sure. And the term AI has become a political pariah in the last year, 18 months. AI has always existed. It's when you get to machine learning and algorithms and all the things that we are doing, have been doing for years. AI has been around for decades. We just now labeled it something that sounds scary.
So it's machine learning before.
Well, it's machine learning. It's learning from things. But it's gotten to the point now when you start looking at ChatGPT, it starts writing articles on its own by going out in the public space and gathering information. I think that's what kind of frightens people. AI we've been using. So let's look at AI in a policing context, license plate readers or facial recognition technology and other things that are now available that we can use. And we're using those tools today. But there has to be governance of anything that we do. Let's talk about facial recognition just for a moment. And facial recognition, by the way, is reading a facial map. It's mapping the face based on distance points and other things, and it gets an algorithm, a numerical score that will match against other potential people or photographs or images that might likely be the person you're looking for. It could be a one-to-one comparison to validate somebody, or it could be a one-to-many comparison, which most people do based on a database of photographs. I have over 2 million image quality photographs within the Orange County Jail from booking photos, and that's one of the legally permissible uses for facial recognition currently, and we are using that. But it's not perfect, and I think people need to realize with any technology, you have to control for variances. You have to there has to be a human element to the validation process, which we have in our policy for facial recognition technology. And maybe for your viewers, I'll tell this story. If you look at LASO, they have LA Sheriff's Office has been using facial recognition for some time. They've had some pretty famous residents of their jail over time. And one of those, not picking on her, but one of them is Lindsay Lohan. And when they go through the training on facial recognition, they'll run Lindsay Lohan's photo against their database. And this is what people need to realize from a procedural component of how we do our job. Lindsay Lohan's not the first match where a potential person comes up. She's like 3, 4, or 5. And a lot of people know who Lindsay Lohan is. They can look at the first potential match, and it's very clearly not her. 2's not her. 3 is her, right? Is the same person. And that's where the risk comes in with this technology and others like it. You're not trying to validate. Well, you're trying to look at somebody who might be the person. It's a pointer system. It's in legal terms what we call an investigative lead. It's not evidentiary. So if I'm looking for Matt Heslin, I have a photograph of you, and I don't know your identity, by the way. I just know I have a photograph, and it matches against a photo I have in my database. There's somebody else's that says this is Matt Heslin, and that's been validated through other procedural parts, through fingerprints and other things that say this is Matt, and this is his photo. This is the photo we have, which is the subject photo, and we have that comparison. This may be the guy you're looking for. Then you have to go through other investigative processes to validate that that is the guy, right? Through a lineup or something else. And then once you get these other independent processes that validate that this is Matt Heslin, then you can take that to a magistrate court and get a search warrant or an arrest warrant. You can't do it solely based on just facial recognition.
Got it.
It's not evidentiary. It may be one day, but today it is not. Okay. The risk is somebody will violate the tenets of that process or procedures, get a potential match of Matt Heslin, convince a judge to sign a warrant, and that will it violates all the tenets of evidentiary practices and procedure for policing.
Wow.
It's a long story to say that there's a lot of technology that's good. There's a lot of tools that we have in our toolbox that can make us better and complement our work, but none of them can act independent without having some process procedure for governance. And even going back for compliance, are people using it correctly? Or here's what we're building into our policy for facial recognition. If you get a false positive, how are we controlling for the false positives to take back to the software provider and have them to check on the algorithm to make sure that they're controlling for false positives and changing their algorithms? And people use the term bias. Bias has a negative connotation to it, but every process, there's bias written into facial recognition technology to eliminate people who aren't very clearly the right people to match. So you have these biases written into the algorithms that will eliminate those who it cannot be or shouldn't be. But you have to be able to go back and look at that software and make sure you update it and control it and improve upon it so it makes it year to year better.
Well, thank you.
That's a long answer to a very simple question.
But the question deserved a long answer because there's a lot that I didn't understand until you just said it. So I'm sure that everybody else didn't understand it. Like you said, AI has been going on for a long time. It was machine learning, and it's been in place, and it's just evolving.
Well, when you look at machine learning or it's improving upon itself, that's not necessarily a bad thing because it's making it more proficient. Yeah. It's making it more reliable. It's improving upon itself. I think what scares people is, the Terminator Skynet.
Yeah, for sure.
This thing is now acting independent of everybody and doing its own thing. And that is already happening, by the way, and has been happening for years. I can't remember the software, but there was a software written before this became a really big deal where the software had an identity and it would had a profile and it would converse with people. And it was learning as it's doing this. And people didn't even know that it wasn't a real person.
Wow.
With that happening now, if you call any customer service, it's pretty annoying. You're talking to a bot, and it's very clearly not a person, and it just annoys the what out of everybody because I just want to talk to I have a simple question. This thing's not helping me. It will get progressively better over time. It's just not there yet, and I think that there's positives and there's costs that go into each one of these things that we do. But if any technology that we have, and at least in my organization, I think others feel the same way. If it's not complementing someone's work or making them better or relieving some of the tasks, I don't even want to talk to them. Don't give me something that makes our personnel's job more difficult.
Don't give me something that makes me hire more people.
Well, it shouldn't have to hire more people, but if you add a process in that takes more time than the benefit of what it's giving you, then I don't even want to talk to you. Don't even bring it to me. Yeah, and there's a lot of people that have relied on that model for years in IT, that I've got the panacea, I've got the best thing that you can use, and they bring it to you, and it makes the job more difficult and doesn't deliver.
Who needs it?
Yeah, who needs it?
Hey, let me switch topics for a second because illegal immigration is on the mind of everybody. You know, it's in the campaign. It's front and center. In your life, probably, it's becoming more and more important to get our arms around it. Do you see illegal immigration as a problem in Orange County right now?
Well, I think it's a problem everywhere. I'm going to talk about it in different aspects.
Okay.
But yes, and I know that to be true because every week I get a notification, a letter from Homeland Security that lets me know that those who have been allowed into the country, their destination that they're selecting is Orange County and LA County.
Really?
And they will tell me the top 3 countries that they're coming from, which may shock people overall. And I've had conversations with Secretary Mayorkas and his staff about this risk. You can't have national security if you have a porous border. You can't control for who's coming into the country. There's significant risk that comes with this. And I'm not picking on, just want to qualify, I'm not picking on the people that want to come here and make a better life.
Agreed.
There's processes for doing that. My father-in-law is an immigrant to the United States, now a U.S. citizen, but he did it the right way. He followed the rules, and he filled out paperwork, and he came here and got a work visa and eventually became a citizen of the United States. And I think people, not him, but people like him that followed the rules, they're the ones that are most upset about the porous border because they did it right.
Yeah.
They did it right. Why can't these other people do it right? So we have millions of people that are crossed into our country, many of them for a better life, and that's what doesn't want the American dream, but you have to do that within a controlled environment. I'm more concerned about the people of malicious intent that have been able to gain access into this country.
Do you get a list of people with prior records on the paperwork that you receive?
No, I just get the number. It's an aggregated number and the top 3 countries whom they represent. And that might shock people because some of these, and it's not a classified document. It's
Right.
a public document. I got a notification once, and it was my son-in-law, and I said, read this and tell me what stands out to you. I didn't tell him what to look for. And he read this document. And again, it's not classified. It's open source information. It's a letter to me. And he read it, and he reads the top 3 countries, and he looks down and he goes, China?
That's what I thought.
Yeah. He goes, yeah, one of the top 3 countries are Mike. So think about this. Dissidents of China are flying from China to Mexico and then walking into our country through a very porous border. And you would expect to see Mexico or Guatemala and some of these other countries, but you see China on there. That's a little frightening to think we have these people who are coming into our country. And in the last 2 federal fiscal years, we had 600,000 and 800,000 people who are gotaways. Gotaways means, for the purpose of the viewers, that somebody successfully got into the country and made it through, and they have no idea who they are, what their intent is. They got away, and they're in the continental United States.
There's 800,000?
There's 1.4 million over 2 years, 2 federal fiscal years. Now, this is the frightening part, and this is what concerns me the most. I'm not picking on those people who want a better life, but when you look at that number in context, and you realize during the year prior, not this federal fiscal year, but we had 157 people encountered at the border who were on the FBI's terror watch list.
Oh my God.
Who are trying to gain access into this country. And you look at the 1.4 million who have successfully got in. I'm not saying they're all terrorists, but you can expect that some of them probably are people who have nefarious intent. We just put out a notice nationally of a gang from South America that is putting out hits on American law enforcement. Go out and attack and attempt to kill American law enforcement. And there's over 1,000 of these gang members now within the continental United States, believed to be, who are coming here to not be nice. You have the South American theft groups that have made their way in.
I was going to ask you about that.
The cartels, fentanyl, human trafficking, sex trafficking, people working in servitude to pay off debt to the cartels. This is not just about people who want a better life. This is a criminal enterprise run by the cartels, working with China with precursor chemicals, money laundering within the continental United States. It's so much larger than just a border issue. But one of the ways we curb that and start to get some semblance of control back into the security of this country, national security, is you have to secure the border and control who's coming into this country. If you go back, I'm sorry, Matt, but you go back to 9/11, 23 years ago almost, the one benefit we had post 9/11 is we had a big buffer called the Atlantic Ocean, that these people who wanted to do us harm had to strive very hard to get here, or we had control systems that knew who they were, even though they were in our country and a malicious intent.
Right.
We knew who they are. We knew they were here. We have no idea who's within the continental United States today, what their intent is. We know people have associations of terror groups that are in the country, and what they are capable of doing today would make 9/11 seem minuscule if they were to act out in mass and do something at a much larger scale.
Don,
Will they get an airplane to fly into a building? Probably not, but they can do things spontaneously in different ways.
So how do you, as the leader of Orange County's, policing departments, how do you protect the public against that? I mean, it's just too big of a...
Well, we have a lot of tools that we're very unique. You talked about Orange County, and some of the organizations I'm involved with, I'm on several national appointments on
It have to do with Homeland Security.
FBI, and others, technology groups, and so mostly it's make sure you get the information out to the people who, when that information came out about that gang and the hits, we put that out nationally. It was targeted to a region of the United States that's not Southern California, but we had made sure that people knew this is the intent of this group, and if you have these gang members here present, you should be, for an officer awareness, they should be aware of what these people are being, the hits that they may be trying to do. So that's different. But if you look at Orange County specifically, we have some tools here that most people may not even know that we have. We have a counterterrorism fusion center we were in place before 9/11. It was called the TEWG, Terrorism Early Warning Group. And we had this in Orange County before 9/11. When we went to the Fusion Center Network, which is counterterrorism intelligence information vetting systems in scale that looks at everything. Used to be counterterrorism from abroad. They're now what we consider all crimes, all hazards. We're looking at all forms of risk. So they're looking at drug trafficking, looking at human trafficking. They're looking at domestic terrorism, counterterrorism, all these risks. In Orange County, of the 3,100 sheriffs nationally, I'm the only sheriff in the nation has its own counterterrorism fusion center, the Orange County Intelligence Assessment Center, and it is one of the highest producing in the nation to help keep us safe. When I talk about Orange County, it's not just for Orange County. They put out intelligence product to the benefit of the county, the region, the state, and the nation routinely that they are able to do because they're very talented people. You look at risk, you have to look at risk in whole. You don't look at it just in Orange County. We've solved cases from Orange County that were cases from the other side of the country where we had bad actors doing certain things that we've identified and brought information back to our partners in the federal government, the FBI or others who are looking for assistance, and we've been able to help them. And vice versa. We have a great network of helping people. So I'm very proud of what we've done here, and we have obviously phenomenal deputies. We have great relationships in Orange County with the municipal agencies. When you look at training, we train at the same level across the country. There's a reason why when we had the incident last year in Tribuco Canyon at Cook's Corner, and the year before that we had the incident that occurred at the Geneva Presbyterian Church in Laguna Woods, both active shooter incidents, and lives were lost in both, but our response was because we trained them on how to handle these things over time. If you look at Geneva Presbyterian Church, and people may not know this, and this is because we've been training our personnel for decades how to handle these types of incidents. When Geneva Presbyterian Church happened, active shooter in a church, the calls come into 911. The call receivers give the information to dispatch. They put it out to patrol cars. 13 patrol cars converge on the Geneva Presbyterian Church. They put on the equipment we provided for them, the Kevlar helmets, the ballistic vests that are more significant than the vests you wear in regular duty. They get their long rifle platforms that we provided for them, their assault weapons. They form a plan, which we train them to do over time, to go out and make contact teams. They use their breaching tools we provided for them so they can breach into locked doors and barricaded areas. And all that to said, plus the training, From the second one in 911, the call comes in to our deputies being inside the church after all that response in under 4 minutes.
That's incredible.
That's incredible. About 2 or 3 weeks after that, Uvalde, Texas happened. And I'm not picking on Uvalde, but totally different outcome they had in Uvalde, Texas, and in Parkland and other areas of the country, because our personnel, we invested in them. You talk about where there's a money show.
Right.
That's not a cost. It's on a budget, but that's not a cost.
It's an
That's an investment. You're making an investment into something that you hope you never have to use. But we put that into our personnel to best prepare them on the highly unlikely chance that happens in our service area, but happened twice in 2 years. At Cook's Corner, the active shooter we had there, our deputies were there in under 2 minutes and engaged in an 8-minute firefight with this suspect. And, eventually he lost his life. We prevailed because he was actively shooting at our deputies. Here's the other thing people didn't realize, talk about investment. Our deputies, after that scene, went from hot to warm, meaning it became no longer dynamic. It becomes a static scene, and we have to control it. And we have great partners in the Orange County Fire Authority and their tactical, their paramedics. But our deputies went into tactical medicine, which we trained them to do with their individual first aid kits and shoot kits and other things. If not for their immediate first aid they provided, trauma care, we probably lost more lives on the scene in both of those incidents, if not for their quick actions. So
that's impressive.
But it's looking at, and I shared those stories nationally. I'll tell you a little bit. This is a little bit of frustration for me. When you looked at Geneva Presbyterian Church in Uvalde, Texas happened, and Uvalde, the outcome, the after action report on Uvalde, Texas is now public, and people are talking about lessons learned and things that everything they could have done better, we were already doing. We should be talking about how to successfully navigate these types of incidents, not talking about the failures that occur. Why go back and talk about failure? Let's look at emulating good practices, put in place good procedures, good training, good tactics, the tools to do the job. All these things are very important, but it takes a cost to do that. If you are any policing agency, and Uvalde will forever be on the map of America for all the wrong reasons, but if you're looking at investing in this, you have to make the money available, and that goes true for anything that we do.
Right.
But it's not by default that these things have happened. No. Well, for us, it's by design. By making sure that you are prepared for these things.
Well, and you've got good people working with you.
I have phenomenal people working for me.
So let me ask you, DEI has no place in your hiring practices, I would imagine.
DEI?
Diversity, equity, and inclusion?
No, I think I'm highly a believer in that. I'm going to tell you a little differently. So if you look
let me say just a minute. I was using it as a negative because diversity, equity, and inclusion sounds great, but when you're hiring somebody who's got the talent to do the job over somebody who's just happens to be African American, that's a problem.
Well, here's the thing that I don't look through my life in that lens. Right. I'm looking for the best talented people who want to come and do a job.
That's it.
And they happen to be very diverse, and we happen to have significant inclusion. Great. I have people who are LGBTQ. I have people who work for me who are trans. I have people who are Black, Latino.
But you didn't hire them because of that.
No, I think that you hire them for the right reason. But here's the thing that bothers me. If you look at in community how these things manifest, become an issue. Let's go back to George Floyd, post George Floyd.
Okay.
And I may have been the first law enforcement professional that spoke out against that. Within 24 hours, I issued a statement about how wrong that was. I'd never seen that as a tactic before. We don't train that way. Yeah, that was just insane to see that happening. And if you look at Derek Chauvin, the look on his face, he looks that way because he knows he can do that.
Yeah.
And it was very, it was a very sad moment. And by the way, that doesn't matter what uniform you're wearing. That's what he did, splashed on all of us. Absolutely. And impacted us. We all had to respond to that. That aside, if you look at all the incidents that happened post George Floyd, I mentioned the 80 protests and demonstrations we responded to.
Right.
And it became a race issue. And I have members of the community, keep in mind my deputies, when they're there, and this is what I love about them, they're there to protect the First Amendment rights of individuals, which is their right.
Yeah.
But they're protecting them while these people are yelling at my staff about how much they hate them.
It's crazy.
And then, but I have members on my department who are black, and they're getting it twice. They have the community yelling at them about how can you be in this profession, as a black person.
And then you get the black people.
And then then they're yelling. Then they're complaining that there's not enough black representation.
He loses both ways.
Yeah, they're getting it from both sides. So what I did do during that period is I started a diversity council within my department.
That's awesome.
Rather than talking about how we're going to best serve the public, let's look at our house. How are we doing internally? And it was a voluntary ask if anybody wants to participate. And it wasn't just about members who were black. It was, we had black, we had Hispanic, Latino, Vietnamese, LGBTQ, women. It didn't matter. If you are some of these perceivably marginalized groups, come and be part of this group and tell us, how are we doing internally? Are we doing the right things? Do you feel valued? That's really what this comes down to, is value. And they came back and said, yeah, we think we are doing a good job internally. And there was some validation in that, but then it's okay, how do we do better? How do we go out and find more people who are diverse that best represent the community, part of this profession internally? And we have done a pretty good job. I'll tell you, the one area where we most definitely need better representation is just having women come into this profession. Women in policing is still, if you look at it as a percentage or representation of the public, it's significantly underrepresented. And we are trying to bring that number up. We had a very focused effort on reaching out to women to be part of our organization. And internally, it was a marketing campaign. Yeah. We're really going out and marketing to women to bring them in. And one department member asked me, we're at 17%, we're at 18%. We keep going up a percentage over time. They said, when is the target? And I said, when we get to 51%. If you want to be representative of the community, when we're 51%, women and 49% male, then we know that we're reflective of the community we serve.
That's very interesting.
So really, it's not about hitting targets. It's about getting the right people.
Amen.
And I love the people we have. They serve very well.
Do you, in the reporting section, you're an elected official. So do you have a boss?
Well, technically I do. I have 3.2 million of them. That's the residents of Orange County.
Yeah.
But under the state constitution, I actually, for the performance of my job, I don't really answer to, but the oversight comes from the Attorney General of the state of California. Okay. For district attorneys and sheriffs, not police departments, but just the elected officials. That doesn't mean that the Attorney General can come down and tell me how to do my job. It's more of accountability for the job that I do. So if I went rogue and said, I'm going to start just doing my job completely outside the expectations of the public or the government code or the penal code or something in there, he can hold me accountable for that. Okay. Ultimately. The Board of Supervisors has certain provisions in the government code for budgetary processes and other things. They can't tell me how to do my job. They can't say, don't arrest here or do this. They give me the resources to be able to deliver policing to the community in Orange County.
So your budget rolls up into the county budget?
Yes and no. There's a lot. Well, yes, it's budgeted there, but a lot of the budget streams that come into that are for the use of policing, some of our proprietary tax revenue. Prop 172 is a half-cent sales tax passed back in the early 90s. That's the bulk of my budget. There's some general fund expenditures. We have contracts with municipal cities, 13 in Orange County to 34. We're their police department, so there's a contract for that. We have grants that we get and other funding streams through DHS and others that have purpose. But here's the interesting part about contracting. In the government code, just for counties, by the way, just for sheriffs, not for municipal agencies, I have a zero cost recovery. It's actually a cost recovery item. I can only charge for the services I provide. I can't make a profit. So if you are, we're in San Juan Capistrano, which is one of the sheriff's contract cities. Right. They contract with us, and it's a very unique contracting process. You're paying for personnel and man minutes, basically. And if we under-deliver, let's say you have a vacancy during the year for 3 months, and Matt is one of the deputies working here, and you get promoted, and that vacancy happens for 3 months, we give you a credit back. So you're going to charge to the nickel, actually to the penny, of exactly what you get in service delivery.
That's great.
And we don't have any I can't profit off of it.
What do you have, like 13 communities that you can?
We have 13 municipalities, and then all the unincorporated areas within a county is part of our service area. And we have other contracts as well. Some of them are cost-applied contracts with other government agencies like John Wayne Airport, we're the police department there, OCTA, Orange County Transportation Authority, we're the policing on their mass transit lines that we provide for. Counties, parks pays us for the harbors. We have the 42 miles of coastline by government code and all the 3 municipal harbors. And we have other countywide benefits, helicopters and canines and all these other things we do that just provide services on a much broader scale.
Makes you feel safe. Right?
Tactical teams. We have 4 different SWAT teams that we have.
Do you really?
Yes. And it's
So
it's
are they
credible.
based on location for the 4 teams?
They're based on deployment. So they're in rotation, and they will they work out of Tustin, which is centrally located. But and we have resources that are advanced deployed. So if they have to go somewhere, they can go get what they need and go into service.
So you've got a lot on your plate.
If you've seen it on NCIS or CSI, we do it. I have a cyber team. I have a cyber investigations team that's the only one in the county of Orange. We go out and investigate cybercrime, and have been very successful in bringing back money that has been stolen from people, either duped or through business email compromise or other ways that these criminal enterprise will get you to give up your money. We've helped with hacks before. We helped with ransomware. They're very, very good at recovering stolen money and losses back for people.
You're also the coroner.
I'm also the county coroner as well. So the coroner, we have the courts, and of course we have the jails. And the jails, I'm very proud of what we've been able to accomplish.
Right?
5 jails. One was closed temporarily. It's been remodeled and opening back up in next month.
The jail needs to be remodeled?
Well, it's been refurbished. The jail that was there in Irvine was built in the mid-'60s, and it was actually wasn't ADA compliant, had all these issues. It was a hodgepodge of facilities built over time out of necessity. I closed that down when I took office in 2019. We had grants from the state of California, $100 million and $80 million to build new jails because of some of the processes that are coming out of the state. And we have finished that completion of that jail, and opens back up.
So you've got a ton on your plate. What, of all the initiatives and all the things that you've got on top of mind, what are some of your most important initiatives?
Well, I mentioned about some of the intelligence and communication that needs to take place.
The new facility?
Just nationally. Sharing of information has become a little bit of an obstacle for us. We were really good about 10 years after 9/11. We've kind of gone back. People have gone back into silos, and we need to make sure that we're vetting information into shared intelligence and putting that out for consumption at a much broader scale. The border, although not specifically my issue, it's become by default all of our issues because of fentanyl, drug trafficking, all the other things that are happening there, I think. But locally, it would be, if there's one thing I've strived to do better than anything, it's the operations of our jails. If you look at what the responsibilities for county sheriffs are, especially in California, but on the East Coast, a lot of sheriffs don't have other responsibilities other than the running and management of their jails. But I have strived to make our jail operations the best thing that we do. And in many ways, we're being recognized nationally for our programs and things we've incorporated into our jails.
What does that mean? Specifically.
Well, so if you look at the jails in Orange County, and I think this is true in most places, especially in California, we have become, over time, the default solution to some of the social issues that we're dealing with. You look at, the Orange County Jail is the largest mental health hospital in the county. I have about 3,700 people entrusted to my care, and 1 out of 2 have a daily nexus to mental health treatment. I have right now about 950 people who are on medication-assisted treatment for opioid use disorder. We have about 100 to 110 people that are on step down for detox within our jail because of weaning them off of alcohol or drugs. And these are all things that have landed in our lap really about the last 10 years. So when I started in the jail back in the late 80s and when I worked there in the early 90s, we had one unit of the jail that had people who were either mentally ill or acutely mentally ill. SPMI is severely and persistently mentally ill, which is the highest categorization of mental illness. These are people you see walking down the street talking to themselves and have serious issues. We now have a whole jail committed to that type of people when it used to be just one housing unit. And I say that, Matt, because I want out of that business. I want out of the social issues business. If you look at what has got us here, it's because the intervention strategies to off-ramp people who are declining either mental health or substance use or whatever it might be, those gaps weren't being filled for many years. And those issues, as they start to decline, they become, by default, law enforcement issues to go out and solve. And the first person somebody sees when they're in mental health crisis or having any type of crisis that's not serious criminal in nature shouldn't be somebody wearing a uniform, a gun, and a badge. There's got to be some other service provision that helps them, gets them into sobriety, gets them into mental health stability or whatever it might be, that will get us out of that encounter. And if we can do that, first of all, if you're talking about investing, that's an investment into programs, but we should only be involved when it's serious criminal activity, not dealing with people who are homeless and all these other things that have landed on our shoulders. It's not our cross to bear.
Homelessness is a huge issue.
It's a huge issue, but look at how that's happened. It's policy decisions that have happened at the state level, closing of mental health hospitals. There's so many things that go into the homelessness crisis that we are facing. But people who are in homelessness, they didn't become homeless, then become mentally ill. They didn't become homeless, then become drug addicted. Usually it's one or both of those other things that resulted to them being...
To the antecedent.
Yes, exactly. And so if you look at where we are today, we have to solve, going back to the root cause, or what they call problem-oriented policing. Rather than dealing with the policing component, what are the problems that manifested into this encounter and solve the problems for that individual? And we have great programs here in Orange County, and others as well, but we've really taken a really good approach and built significant resources committed and programs out. If you come back to my jail right now, if you're incarcerated, there are service provisions offerings for every individual. Think high school guidance counselor. Matt, what do you need? Do you need employment? Do you need housing? Do you need medication? Do you need whatever it is? People will leave our jail. They'll give them 10 to 14 days of medication. We strive to tie them to post-custody programming. So when they walk out, they have stability and ultimately don't come back. If you come back to my jail, it's not because of our want in keeping you out. It's because you made decisions that brought you back. All that said, and there are people who need to be in jail for the protection of the public. But if we can solve those social problems that are impacting and harming our community in ways to where we get people out of homelessness, into housing, into stability, into getting them Medicaid, all the things we're doing now, and they stop that cycle of coming back, everybody wins. And you look at, especially for the business you're in, which is real estate, commercial real estate development, everybody wins in that. So this is what is, when you look at the cycle or the ecosystem that we have in our communities, that policing is obviously a very serious component of that. Most people, when they buy homes or go to work somewhere, they want to know that they are safe, that they're being provided for and they're safe. But that has this system where safety, especially where we are today in Orange County, drives valuation, which drives taxes, which drives, we work on a tax basis, which drives, for me, revenue, which means service provision. If you look at that conversely and we start to lose the safety or perception of safety, and you start having vacancy rates go up because people don't want to work there or live there anymore, and property valuation goes down and tax revenue starts to wane, that means we don't get to do what we do. And I'm not saying that we are in this business of driving tax revenue, but this is what people don't realize about Orange County. If you look at every property tax dollar that goes to Sacramento, Orange County, the county of Orange, I should say, gets 6 pennies back for every dollar, 6%. It's the lowest in the state by far. The next lowest is 13%. If we just got in Orange County the same, and by the way, San Diego, Orange County, roughly the same size. They have 3.3 million residents. We have 3.2 million residents. We're much more congested and a smaller footprint. The county's much smaller in Orange than it is San Diego. But if we just receive back what San Diego got or receives in property tax revenue, for Orange County, it would mean an extra $800 million a year that we can invest.
You know, it's so funny that you took the next half of my questions, just smashed them there. I had because I wanted to know from a personal perspective, a selfish perspective, quite honestly, the relationship between police services and property valuations. And it's very basic, right? It's like, the better the police services are, the more they're on their job, doing a good job, the higher values the properties are going to be, the more tax revenue they're going to realize.
Yes. Well, there's a lot that goes into property valuation. Orange County is very unique. I predicted back let's go back to 2007, 2008, where the collapse of the real estate market and a lot of things that happened during that period. Great times. It was a lot of fun. But it took our business to, we were impacted probably more than people realize, because we had to start scaling back operations to the point that we could no longer provide some of the critical provisions of our service. And we were looking at scrapping certain things that we could not fund anymore. So, there's that ecosystem, that cycle. I was explaining to somebody once, you talk about how government works, and people don't really look at how dollars move. Every time that dollar moves, there's a percentage of that original dollar. It only takes about $1 to move less than 2 times through a system before that dollar is completely consumed back by the government in taxes. That's why it's so important to make sure the economy is strong and robust. When we went through COVID, all the money that was given out through ARPA and other things was about keeping the economy, keeping money moving. Because if money stops and people take money, put it in the bank, and don't spend it, that revenue off that money doesn't happen.
Right.
And so keeping the economy strong, at least money moving, you think about it. If you have an earnings, if you're a business, you pay through your business tax.
Yeah.
And then you have your personal income you pay on that. Right. Then you have your sales tax that you go to dinner somewhere, and they pay tax on that as well. And that's system of money moving. When you look at that original dollar and you start cutting off provisions of that $1, it doesn't take long before that dollar is completely reconsumed by the government to provide services. And that's huge. But if you look at how we provide services, and what's important is not going out and finding new tax dollar revenue. I'm not a believer in raising taxes. I don't think it's necessary. I think what's necessary of us is to be very responsible for the money that's provided to us. I look at this money like it's my own. Yeah. I have a $1.5 billion budget in the Sheriff's Department.
Wow.
And I look at every dollar of where are we spending that? Where do we stop? Where do we reinvest? What are we getting out of it?
See, Don, this is what I started the show with. Was you're obviously one of the most educated in so many facets of your business. And it's like me and my business. I own it. I own my space. I know all the details I need to know. And you're doing that for the benefit of the public here in Orange County. So here's a question for you. And I know it's an elected position, but first of all, you've been in office for what?
I've been with the department. I'm my 36th year. I've been in office since 19. So 5 years and 5.5 years I've been.
So you have 3 years left?
I actually have 4.5 years left. The last term by Governor Newsom, and a bill that he signed into law, moved sheriffs, unless you're a charter county, it's written into your charter when the elections have to happen, which is not many who have that, moved the elected sheriff and elected DAs off of the midterm cycle onto the presidential cycle.
Oh, wow.
And in order to do that, he had to extend our current term from a 4-year to a 6-year term. So my next office will begin in 2029. The next election for me is 2028.
2028.
Yes.
So
it's the longest primary cycle I've ever. 6 years of a primary.
Like, give me a break.
Yeah.
So are you enthusiastically going to run again?
I'm running a third term, but
Good.
I'm in uniform, so I can't campaign. This is not a campaign.
No,
it's
I
just
understand.
a statement.
But I want to know for my own self-interest.
Yeah,
I
intend to stay here for as long as my wife will let me, and she knows I love what I do.
Well,
so.
Don, it's just fascinating. I knew this would be fascinating. But do you guys do succession planning at all?
Of course, we do that at every level.
But it's hard to do that with an elected official, right?
Well, it's not about succession planning. It's about setting people up for creating an environment, as I call it, creating an environment for success. So in my organization, large organization, diverse responsibilities, high-risk responsibilities that we have to do on a regular basis, but we go down to the bottom level and cultivate and develop talent. And so
That's awesome.
as I explain, I'm not the big box at the top of the org chart. I'm the little box at the bottom. I support my people from the bottom up, and they should have higher expectations of me than I have of them. I have to provide for them and create the environment for them to be successful, give them the training, the tools, and trust them to do their job in many ways. And they have knocked my socks off. But running a business, and this is probably important for your listeners, and I'm a little unique in the profession of policing, where we are full. Departments across the country are telling the story of they can't attract people in, they can't recruit people into their profession, they have vacancies. We're actually doing the over-under to not overhire deputy sheriffs because I have so many applicants who are coming here, and a lot of them are laterals from other agencies who want to come work here. But that's half the equation. The more important part of that equation is retention. Recruiting the right people in is the important part. Retaining them in your organization over a period of 28, 30 years is an important part. And I'll explain to your listeners why that's important to me specifically. And it's kind of the mantra for me. It's one family, right? One family, one mission, one fight. We are a family. We're a family that looks out for each other. But if we went back to the era when I hired back in the late 80s, early 90s, and we had the attrition that we were dealing with back then, which was about 1 in 3 deputies. At one point, almost 1 in 2 deputies would leave before they got to year 4. In the first 36 months of employment, they would go work somewhere else. They would lateral to another agency. We've reversed that trend. We've hired about 400 people who've come back. People aren't leaving us to go work somewhere else. People are leaving on occasion, but if they're leaving, it's not because they don't want to work here. It's because their family moved to Idaho and they went somewhere else, and that's fine. But our retention is through the roof, and that's the important part. I explained to this is a money issue.
Yeah.
When I talk to our staff, our deputies and others, why that's important to me about how well we treat each other within this profession. We lift each other up when necessary. If necessary, we carry somebody when they're down, right? We have to be a family. But if we went back to that level of attrition when I hired on, and if that happened today, it would cost me about $7 million to rehire people over the next 3 to 4 years just because they didn't want to work here anymore. So you look about, we have a finite budget. If I have to go spend $7 million to hire somebody to replace you because you left at 2.5 years because you want to work somewhere else, there's a cost associated with that. And when I tell them, we just went to a new weapons platform. We went to Glock 17s, Gen 5. That's a multi-million-dollar purchase for me. I have, thousands of employees to go buy new firearms and the leather gear and the tools that go with that. That's millions of dollars. I can give you the tools to do your job, or I can go rehire people to fill your vacancy because you made them leave because you didn't treat your partners well. What would you rather have? Would you rather the tools, the training, and they get it. I think they're starting to see they're seeing the financial impacts of running a big, diverse organization.
Do you have, I'm sure you do you have certain leaders within the organization that are responsible for their own budget? Like the jail?
Oh yeah, everybody. There's subcategories of every budget. Now, when you look at budget cost centers that we put them in, it's an aggregated budget, but it gets divided up and parsed out based on command and then divisions within that command. So look at custody command, for example. We have 5 different divisions that are in our jail command. We have the intake release center. We have the men's central jail, women's and central jail. We have the Theo Lacey facility, and we have the James A. Musa facility, which is the new jail that we're opening down in Irvine. And we have inmate programs, which is a division that does all the service provisions programs for them. But each budget, there's an aggregation of that the command acts, and each division has a budget based on cost. 85% of my budget is people. It's employee costs. It's salary and employee benefits that go into these things. And you can obviously invest in that, but I can't have one division spend 120% of their budget. There's no way that that's feasible. But if you look at cost containment, if I'm running vacancies when we had vacancies, you're saving on the salary cost and the employee benefit cost, which is significantly higher than it was when I hired on. And you can cover the overtime costs. As a strategy in budgeting, there are times where I would rather than have a position, we could better utilize a budget to backfill other positions with overtime when necessary, because employees are very expensive. And I'll explain what that means maybe to your listener. When I started here in the late 80s, for every dollar in salary, there's roughly a quarter spent in employee benefits, 27 cents. Now it's almost dollar for dollar. For every salary of dollar or dollar in salary, there's a dollar in employee benefits. So
Is that high?
It's very, very high. So when you look at that in staffing models, in allocation, in deployment of resources, there are times where it makes more fiscal sense than adding another position than just saying, if you have a position, Matt, and you work in San Juan Capistrano and you work 4 10-hour shifts, and you look at the allocation, there's mathematical algorithms you put into allocation and deployment of resources. How many people you need, how you deploy them over the course of a 24/7 operation, because we are a 24/7 operation. It may say that in order to meet the service demands of San Juan Capistrano, we need a shift for Friday and Saturday night, but we don't need a shift on Thursday and Sunday night. It may make more sense to hire somebody on overtime at time and a half for 20 hours a week rather than hiring a full-time body at 40 hours a week and have all the employee benefits that come on top of that layered. It's not as simple as just throwing resources at a problem. You have to look at the cost and cost containment of that over time. And I think when you look at what we do, and we may be one of the few law enforcement agencies that actually look at allocation, deployment of resources the way that we do, because there are significant costs. Deputy sheriffs are very expensive. The one area that I will cover, though, and maybe for local residents may appreciate this, but when you look at cost containment as a policy, what Orange County did years ago, it's called the UAAL. It's the unfunded actuarial accrued liability through pensions. And that happened post 2008 when the economy tanked for a while. But the County of Orange, for want of better terms, refinanced their unfunded liability to a shorter period. It's like going from a 30-year mortgage to a 15-year mortgage. Yeah. And they have rapidly chipped away at the unfunded liability where other pension systems have not taken corrective measure. CalPERS, for example, is still adding unfunded liability every year because of policy decisions it has made. What that means to Orange County taxpayers is over time, it will be adequately funded. It already is nearing the adequately funded. They're 82, 84%, somewhere in that funded. And what that means is at any given moment, if every single of the 18,000 employees in the county all quit today, all retire today, 82 or 84% of their pension is funded already. But not everybody becomes pensionable. Not everybody stays through an entire career. They take it and move with them. But before 2001, when we went to the pension systems, which, by the way, I'm going to upset people in my department, I argued against back in the late 90s, against the 3% of 50. I told them we have different opportunities that are much more mutually beneficial to our employees, Orange County taxpayers, and to the county by not getting on that system. But they did go that direction, and it went from super funded in 99, which means we were, I think, 102 or 104% funded on our pension system, and took it down overnight because there was a lot of retroactive pension obligations that were made to people who didn't pay into it. And it really depleted that. Now we're working our way back up. But over time, as we become now adequately funded and potentially even super funded, those contributions and benefit costs will be brought back down. Employee contributions can be brought back down, meaning more money in the pockets of our employees, which makes us a more attractive place. But we can come up with a system that is going to be beneficial for everybody, that is sustainable over time, meaning we're not going to bankrupt the system. I think those policy decisions made years ago will never happen again, mostly because change in legislation and other things. Right. But we can have an environment where we become an attractive county to work for, because we will be able to take care of our employees in a better way because of some of the pain we sustained early on. We absorbed it up front.
Yeah. It sounds like you've had just a tremendous success with your employees and maintaining morale. And so you think about all this defund the police stuff, right? All over the nation. And now you see all these people trying to hire them back. I mean, I don't know what they thought that was going to achieve, what outcome they expected by defunding the police, what positive.
Well, that was a political message that took place. Yeah. And You mentioned before I'm elected, so by default I'm the P word. I'm a politician, but I'm a deputy sheriff at heart, and I look through what we do through the lens of how do we take care of our people, support them appropriately, hold them accountable where necessary. Right. I have no problem with holding people accountable for their actions, but it is a little unique when you look at this business that we're in and how you make sure that you take care of your people. When I talk to the deputies and employees who work for me, I tell them, I can't make you happy. I can create an environment for you to find your happiness, right. But I can't mandate happiness within the department. But if I can help them navigate the opportunities, develop them, give them mentors and all the other things that we're very, very good at, I think they're finding in their own way, they're finding a not only a profession, but an organization that cares deeply about them, that will help them meet their goals. If you have some aspiration you want to do in this profession, there's a high likelihood you can do it here in the Orange County Sheriff's Department.
Are you hiring now?
We are hiring constantly. So we run our own academy, the Orange County Sheriff's Academy. We hire roughly 200 to 250 a year.
Wow.
We're hiring right now heavily not because we're doing anything wrong, but if you look at some of the hiring practices and demands that we underwent back in the 90s, we opened jails back then, so we had to hire hundreds of deputies for those positions. We had new contracts for policing through incorporated cities that means we had to hire for dozens and hundreds of positions. Well, all those people are now aging out and retiring, which means we're repeating the cycle, right. Not because we still have we're growing, just because we have to backfill these positions. So we're hiring hundreds. And our jail in Irvine that's opening up will have some new positions for that as well.
You also had another building you were talking about.
Yeah, we actually just opened up our technology center in the city of Tustin. It's one of my favorite success stories. If there was ever a legacy project that I had, this would be it.
Tell us what.
For more than a decade, I've been striving to find a home for some of our units and details that needed to be centralized. They had like service provisions. They were interconnected, and putting them under one roof would be beneficial for us. So I have 3 different divisions that are now co-located within this building. It's an existing industrial tilt-up building, 130,000 square feet. We were looking for a home for years for them. Real estate in Orange County is in high demand, especially when you have very specific needs. That means you have limited options on how to meet those needs. Right. So one of those would be what's called a PSAP, Public Safety Answering Point, a dispatch. So you want to co-locate our dispatch with our intelligence groups, the Kayak, which I mentioned earlier, the Orange County Intelligence Assessment Center, our newly opened Real-Time Operations Center, our Department Operations Center. That's on the 2nd floor. So we found a location in Tustin, and the property owner, we went into a long-term government lease, which means we have 10 years and 2 5-year re-ups, and it's scaled over time based on a predetermined growth factor for cost. And that fully burdened 20-year lease was going to cost us about $110 million. I mentioned earlier that I found within some changes in the way we contracted in IT, canceling contracts, getting on a software as a service model, we saved about $5 to $7 million a year just in contracts with IT, which put us cost positive, right? Not cost neutral, but positive. As soon as we entered into that long-term government lease, by the way, all the TI is built into that lease, so they're going to build the building out for our need, which means making an 8.0 sustainable seismic upgrades, because it has to have that for our PSAP. All these things that they're doing, about 2 or 3 months afterwards, the landlord came and said, we're selling. We wrote into our contract a right of first refusal based on current market values. I went back to the then CEO of the county, who just recently retired, Frank Kim, who was a phenomenal partner to work with, and told him that the property was going up for sale. And he said, dang it, we should have seen that. Well, we did, because we put in a right of first refusal. And if you look at the valuation of current market value, it was going to cost us $110 million to lease that building for 20 years. In year 21, we had to renegotiate or move. To purchase the building is going to cost us $110 million to purchase it outright, which means in year 21, we own it. We're cost neutral. It's built out to be a 50-year building. We have 30 years of use beyond the first 20.
Wow.
It was a win-win-win. So we bought the building. And we bought it because we found the capacity within our own budget to go out and buy that building. So we're still saving money on a building that we purchased, which is great. And what the Real-Time Operations Center is for your listeners is analysts and officers that sit in a room. We talked about AI and technology. We have all these community cameras that they're bringing in, and I'll give an example so they can look at. Let me give you this comparison. When I started in this profession, and I was working patrol back in the 90s and early 2000s, and I'd be dispatched to a call for service. Probably 90% of the time, if it was a robbery or some active crime, I probably drove by the person before we knew who we were looking for, and they would get away. About a month ago, we had a carjacking happening in real time in one of our contract cities. Deputies are responding to that location where the crime occurred. Our Real-Time Operations Center staff is up. They're looking for the car using LPRs, license plate readers. They locate the victim's car as it's moving through the county and the community. They follow that car using community cameras. So at the same time we have deputies responding to the scene where this carjacking occurred, we have deputies converging on this car that just got jacked, stolen, and they have that car now stopped. They had the car stopped and detained before they even made it to the scene to interview this person.
Awesome.
So think about when
That's
you
pretty
look
cool.
at how outcome, how great it is to show up and have this person, this victim, say, my car just was violently stolen from me. And we say, yes, we know we have your car already, and the suspect's detained.
Did you deliver it to their driveway?
Well, we get it back to them. But when you look at
That's awesome.
deterrence of crime, and we're really good at solving crime in this county, so it's not just about that one thing. But this Real-Time Operations Center is intended to be very robust. It's not only a county sheriff's asset. We have municipal agencies that are working with us. They're putting personnel there. We're looking at all these things happening real time across the entire county. We have use agreements with other people's data from LA and Riverside, San Bernardino, Las Vegas Metro, and other things that we are connecting this interconnected web of data-rich resources to help keep Orange County safe. I'll tell you one, I talk about what we do here, and we're really good at solving crime. You look at some of these residential burglary crews that have come in, and we had a case that we solved back last December, about 7 months ago, and it was a crew, a gang out of Los Angeles, South Central, that was coming into Orange County to commit these residential burglaries, and we had about 5 or 6 that happened in our service area. We had about another 15 or so that happened in other municipalities throughout the county. We started aggregating these cases based on MO and other things they were doing, and put the data together. Anyway, we identified the suspects. We had arrest warrants issued for 20 of them. Wow. Went to LA County with our tactical teams, our SWAT teams, and started arresting them all. And this is where the mindset comes in of criminals. In LA right now, which is a friend of mine is running for DA there. I'll tell you who that person is. Nathan Hochman is running for district attorney in LA. I'm supporting him. We caught these individuals. It was a Tuesday. Our tactical teams have their SWAT gear on, their OD green uniforms, big on the back, sheriff. And these guys are willingly giving up. And they're going, yeah, you caught me. And I know what they're thinking. They're thinking Los Angeles County. It's Tuesday. I'll be out by Thursday, partying by Friday. And our guy said, no, we're from Orange County. And I'm not picking on LA County agencies. That's not their fault. It's the environment they're operating in that makes it very, very difficult for them to do their job. And they need help. They need relief in LA County. The great agencies that need to be supported to bring safety back to LA County.
Question for you. Isn't a great part of that deficiency that they're operating in up there politically motivated? I mean, wasn't it policy decisions that got them to where they are?
Yeah, it is. It's policy decisions. It's politics.
Yeah.
There's no place for politics in policing.
Yeah.
You have to give people I call it the 3 T's, the tools, the training, and the trust to do their job. You support them in their efforts. That does not happen up there in Los Angeles County. They're very extreme positions. You mentioned the defund the police movement that happened back in 2020. And it's interesting when you look at policy positions. Nationally, that was being touted as a political platform, defund the police. People running for office are running on a platform of defunding their policing agencies. But what happened in that year, in 20, when you got to the general elections, people lost on that platform. And what you haven't heard since is run on a platform of defund the police. Now you're hearing people say, well, they didn't really mean it. And they're trying to backtrack their positions, which they can't because they're on audio and video taking those positions. I'm going to shock you a little bit. When people had asked me about defunding the police, I said, fundamentally, I don't disagree with you, but that's not the answer by defunding the police. What they're really saying is, I mentioned this earlier in this program, you need to fund the intervention strategies that keep people out of police contact, meaning get them back in a place where they're not experiencing homelessness or experiencing these social issues, mental illness, breakdowns in society. I was speaking to, this is also post George Floyd, I was speaking to 2 congressional offices about police reform initiatives that are coming out of D.C. And these 2 offices, and they were talking about police use of force and how they're going to solve, either through policy or oversight or whatever, use of force, hold police accountable for use of force. And we have a very robust system, by the way, within the Sheriff's Department, how we evaluate police, our applications of force. And they got done with their spiel, and I looked at them and I said, what if I told you that I could reduce use of force in my organization today by 50% right now? That's a pretty profound statement.
Are you talking about excessive use of force?
No, not excessive use of force, just use of force.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, excessive use of force is if somebody goes too far or doesn't follow policy. I'm just talking about every application of force that you have in my department is evaluated for its use, for the application, for the constraint or restraint that's used. Is it within policy? Or if not, is it excessive or is it even criminal?
Yeah.
And we look at all of those with our internal evaluation of police use of force or any application of force. So looking at these congressional offices, I said, what if I told you I could reduce use of force within the Orange County Sheriff's Department right now by 50%? That's a profound statement. That's a very bold statement. And I looked at them and I said, get me out of social work. Half the applications of force that we have within this organization is somebody who's in a mental health crisis or somebody who's under the influence of a drug or alcohol or both. If we can solve those problems before they become criminal in nature or require a police response, 50% reduction right now. And I'll tell you where you mentioned politics or the P word. And this is what I learned in that conversation. That's not a platform to get reelected on. You don't get reelected by preventing problems. You get elected or reelected by running on solving problems that have been allowed to manifest and occur.
Yeah.
So that whole, we're going to solve this problem, but nothing they did really would solve the problem. I think that the public deserves better when it comes in programming and investment into intervention strategies to keep people out of law enforcement contact. Some people need to be in jail. Many people who are entrusted to my care defaulted there because other failures of government service provision did not exist or are now being built out in a way that will make us better for it. But I think I can probably reduce my jail population by 15 to 20% if we solve the social issues we're dealing with in a way that keeps policing out of that arena.
I don't know how you do that, but...
Well, you have to keep pushing. Yeah. You push. And I think that in Orange County, we've become much better. We've created alternative solutions. We're creating things in the jails to give service offerings. But I'd much rather have it happen on the front end so that somebody doesn't default into my jail. Right. But it takes an investment. And there's limited tax dollars, obviously. Right. But, we waste more money in this country than we can probably ever if we took some of that and invested. Look at fentanyl, for example. The fentanyl crisis coming from the cartels. And I was fortunate to be in a ONDCP, Office of National Drug Control Policy. It's a White House program initiative. So I was invited to go back to D.C. and meet with ONDCP staff on fentanyl. We've been screaming from the rooftop since 2015 on fentanyl and impacts. We saw this coming a long time ago. And I spoke with Dr. Gupta, the drug czar, and his staff, and we were talking about all these other issues, and they're all interconnected. Policy with China, foreign policy with China, all the precursor chemicals that are being manufactured in China that make it to the United States. These things transiting through the United States before they go to Mexico. Literally being in our possession in this country before they get down to Mexico. Pill presses being sold to not pharmacies, but just the cartels who are pill pressing fentanyl pills that aren't oxycodone or Xanax. They're just fentanyl. They look really, really good, fake pills.
Good fake pills.
Yeah, and then the border issue, bringing them across the border, either through maritime or muling them across the border in mass. But I went through all that, and I said, if you look at solving that problem, it's doing 12 things simultaneously that has to happen. You can't do any one thing. You have to do all of them at the same time. That's a huge investment in infrastructure and personnel and in saturation of resources along our border and other things that we have to do. But I ended it by saying this. I said, with all those other things, you have to deal with the demand north of the border, the addiction issue in this country.
That's the issue.
You cannot solve this problem if you have this narcotics economy that exists where demand is so high that supply is always going to be met south of the border. You can take all the El Manchos and all the El Chapos out of the cartel, but as long as there is an incessant need to feed the addiction crisis north of the border, somebody will rise up and meet that supply. And that's if you look at the cartels today, not a fair comparison, but they're Amazon. They're very sophisticated criminal business enterprises. They have distribution, they have manufacturing, they have branding, they have risk and liability, they have
They're a business.
logistics. They are a Fortune 500 multi-billion-dollar business every year, and they have diversified into human trafficking. Nobody makes it to the southern border today without the cartels profiting off that person. Many times women who are trying to navigate from some other place in this world to the United States through the southern border go on birth control before they make that journey because they know there's a high probability of them being sexually abused along the way. It's a horrific story of how the cartels have been allowed to operate. And it's not as easy as just unringing that bell and taking us back to the 1990s cartels, because they are now realizing their profiteering. There was an issue that happened a few years ago, about a year ago, and I'm not picking on the administration, but this current administration took credit for it, and it was getting the cartels to stop the pill production that's happening, the fentanyl clandestine produced pills that happen south of the border. And it was based on this negotiation. That's not what drove that. It wasn't because of the administration's ability to renegotiate or negotiate with the cartels to get them back off. The problem that existed at that point was the cartels had this is supply and demand. They oversaturated the U.S. market with these pills and drove the price point down on a per pill basis in some areas down to 50 cents a pill. That's not the profit margin that works for the cartels. They need those pills to be in the $5 to $10 range to make their return that works for them. So they backed off of the supply component to bring the price point back up over time to make the demand return demand. Mm-hmm. It's macroeconomics.
Yeah, sure.
They had
too much supply
that undercut their profit margins. Yeah. And so they backed off and the prices came back, but they have no interest. The cartels don't care about Americans or America in general. They are killing people at an exponential rate. 110,000 people back to back 2 years in a row.
You think about that as a business model. You're killing your customer who now can't be a repeat customer. I mean, what a stupid.
That's true, but for every one they lose, they're creating 100 more. So in marketing, that would be a loss leader. They're not killing them intentionally. They're killing them by actually what they're really not good at is the chemical aspects, the blending of the chemicals. Right. So as the county coroner, we mentioned I have a dual office. Yeah. I'm also the county coroner. We do toxicology in this fentanyl-related deaths. We've seen toxicity levels of fentanyl up to 33, 36 times the lethal level of fentanyl because they're not really good at blending the chemicals. They're really good at making them look like Xanax or OxyContin, oxycodone. They're not good at the chemical composition. So, and this is where it gets really difficult for young adults and teens. They're told if you take a pill, you die. And they may take a pill and it changes homeostasis. It releases endorphins, especially if you're the adolescent developing brain. It's endorphins on turbo, right? It's endorphins on steroids. It's the impact for kids developing. It's much higher. So that euphoric high may or may not happen. It probably will. They're told they die if they take a pill. They said not only did not die, I felt really good when I did it because that's the way the body reacts to the release of chemicals. But over time, those chemicals are replaced by other chemicals. And over time, when addiction sets in, if you talk to anybody who's an addict, they will tell you, I'm not trying to get high anymore. I'm trying to get back to normal. I'm trying to feel as normal as I can because they suppressed the naturally producing endorphins and dopamine with this chemical imbalance that's now clicking on their synapse when they take these chemicals. It's made it very difficult for them to cope on a day-to-day basis, which is why they have to maintain their use.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah,
Thank
a lot of ground.
What piece of wisdom would you leave our listeners with in terms of?
Well, going back to let's put this in the context of the crux of your show, which is, how do you make more? But I would say, how do you make it better? Right. I can't provide more. I can provide in a way by providing safety to the public, to hoping that everybody feels this is a desirable place to live. They oftentimes drive valuation, but when you look at investment and an investment of anything, the one thing I have is I have manpower, right? We're investing people in solving this problem. And you look at how your listeners, especially locally or anywhere for that matter, have to be co-producers of their own safety. I cannot be the sole service provider of safety within the community. People have to work with us. And we have a great community here in Orange County who routinely work with us to help keep Orange County safe and make it a good place. But there's a tax on our system that's way beyond what we have the ability to hold back. So when we talk about investment or working with us, invest in your family, invest in your kids. Talk about risk of fentanyl. We have great programs in the Sheriff's Department. One of them is Stay Safe OC. You can find it on our website, ocsheriff.gov. That's safety tips on how not to be a victim of crime. So a lot of crime is opportunistic crime, simple things. Like if I was talking to listeners here on your show, simple things they could do. Don't leave items of value in plain sight in your car. Always make sure your car is locked at night. Whenever possible, lock your car, leave your car in a locked garage, not in your driveway. Your car is twice as likely to be burglarized in your driveway and 4 times more likely burglarized parked away from your home. Yeah, put it in the garage. Don't leave your garage door open if unattended. Talk to your neighbors. And one thing if there's any one great thing that happened during COVID is we all met our neighbors, oftentimes for the first time.
Yeah.
Lived in a community for 20 years, didn't know my neighbors were, but we're people. We operate in a sense of community and relationships. We started talking to our neighbors and learned about them. And so know your neighborhood.
What about people getting CCWs?
Well, CCWs for your listeners are concealed carry weapons permits. Yeah. Orange County, we've issued about 22,000.
Wow.
And
that's a lot.
It's a lot, probably the most awesome. Number of wise in the state. I'm very proud of our program. I think it's a constitutional right if you choose to have a weapon to protect yourself. Other counties don't see it that way. Others don't issue. There's changes in the law that's happened because of decisions out of the Supreme Court that have eliminated some of the barriers. But I think, and I'm not trying to get political, and I'm not throwing darts at anybody, but if you look at how the state of California, the California legislature and other offices within the state view guns, law-abiding citizens are the target, which I think that if you look at if you're going to make the state safe, the risk isn't somebody who has a constitutional right to carry a gun. The risk are known criminals using guns in the commission of crime that they are allowing to continue to do that and not holding those people accountable.
Amen.
There's got to be some balance in the system. And so stop targeting people who aren't criminals. Start looking out for those who are criminals who are using guns in the commission of crime and hold them accountable. A friend of mine who is in LA County shared with me, this is a few years ago, I don't know if this is still true today, but more than likely is because of how impacted their jails are there. On average, a career criminal, known criminal, rap sheet that has a history of crime, arrested using a gun in the commission of a violent crime, on average 2 days in jail in LA County.
That's it?
2 days. So when you look at somebody who might be robbing people for their Rolexes or stealing purses from people in a public space, if they get away with it, they get the fruits of their crime. If they get caught, they get 2 days. Some people they've arrested for the same thing multiple times over and over again. There's no deterrent for people not to commit crime, and they're kind of creating their own problems by not holding them accountable.
Is that a DA's job? I'm not trying to pin it on anybody. I'm just.
It's the DA's job when they don't file charges or they let the same people out. The lady that was just killed here in Orange County, the tourist that was killed in Newport Beach by career criminals. The individual who ran over and killed her has 3 recent arrests for violent crimes and was never held accountable to any extent of the law for any one of those. He should have been in prison, and he was robbing people again in Newport Beach and took a lady's life from her. That was the DA's policy up in LA County. George Gascon has made it his issue, his life's mission, not to hold criminals accountable because there's a lack of, in his belief system, it's unfair that these people are arrested, and which is just a ludicrous argument. So, which is why I'm supporting his opponent Nathan Hochman, because I think, and that's LA County, by the way, but the greatest benefit to the safety of residents in Orange County is to help LA County solve their problems
100%.
there. A lot of the crime happening in Orange County is opportunistic crime for people coming from LA County and others into Orange County because they're not being held accountable in the county that they are residing in. Known crimes that are occurring there, offenses that aren't being prosecuted, enhancements for violent crime with gun that aren't being enjoined in that. That's a problem. So just by having a district attorney there that will do their job will probably be the greatest benefit for Orange County residents to help keep us safe.
What you left with the listeners, which is you are responsible for your own security as well. We can't protect it. With 4,000 associates, you can't protect 3 million people. It's just physically impossible.
We have a great relationships with our community here, and we don't have some of the challenges other areas are dealing with, mostly urban areas that have relational issues. It's not relational issues with the policing agencies. It's the politicians listen to the wrong people who they think, and they're letting them be the voice for the community when they're not. Many times these people who show up, and they may be one of 1,000 who scream the loudest, when politicians start to believe that that's a representation of the community they serve, that's a problem. Yeah. They need to get out of their office and walk their communities and hear what people want. If you go to any of these really impacted communities anywhere that are dealing with high crime, gangs, drug dealing, the people who reside in these areas, oftentimes for a lifetime, they're screaming for more police. They want more police. They want more protection. They want more presence. They know that their communities are safer, and the people who are law-abiding residents of those areas, oftentimes socioeconomically challenged areas, very diverse communities, they're the ones that are being harmed the most by people creating policies that protect the criminal element, not the people who they're there to protect.
Okay, so I have two quick questions to end this show. I ask everybody the same question. I already know what yours is, but I'll ask it anyway. So I think it reveals a little bit about your character. Tell me your favorite beer that you love to enjoy.
Well, that's a great question because I'm a beer snob.
I know you are.
And I'll tell you a real funny story first. So if I go out, I have a lot of events and other things I go to that are department based. I went to retirement a few years ago, and everybody looks to see what I'm going to do. If I walk in and I have a bottle of water, it's like the boss is drinking water. And I'm not saying I'm advocating for getting drunk, but you want to be able to enjoy these ceremonial events. Yeah. And so I will go in, and I'm not going to pick on the beer because I want to be fair, but there's certain beers I don't like. I intentionally ordered a pint of beer that I don't like. And I walked down with this pint of beer for about an hour because I didn't want to drink. I didn't want to go out and but I didn't want to give people the impression that I was not there to celebrate. After about an hour and 15 minutes, this young deputy walked up and he said, "Sir, I'm on to you." And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I've been waiting to buy you a beer for the last hour. You've not drank a quarter inch off the top of that beer." And I started laughing. I said, "You're going to make a great investigator one day, but this is what I do. In about 20 minutes, I'll set my $8 pint of beer down on the bar and I'll go home, but everybody's none the wiser." Yeah. So to answer your story, my favorite beer still to this date is Guinness. I love Guinness. Guinness is the best beer on the planet. By the way, if you didn't know this, Guinness has the same calories as Coors Light.
No way.
Oh yeah, it's
so much thicker.
It is, but it's not. It's the sugar alcohol is very low, and what I love about Guinness, you have one, maybe two. You can't. It's full. They call it a meal in a can for a reason.
It is.
But I also like IPAs.
And I know which one you like, Pliny.
Well, Pliny is a great beer. I actually there's a different Russian River beer that I like better than Pliny. It's called Happy Hops because I like really hoppy beers. My favorite local beer is Aurora Hopialis. It's a Karl Strauss beer. And I like others, but I like them for the flavor, not for the consumption. The alcohol content's really high, but I've really kind of backed off of beer a lot lately because it makes you feel full, but I'm also trying to lose weight.
Yeah,
and there's
me
no,
too.
in fact, if you read any diet book, it will say, if you're going to drink a beer, drink a Guinness because of the limit on the carbs that happen in it. So
Okay, last question. So this is the Make More program. Make more of your life, make more revenue, make more friends, make more love, make more happiness, more joy, more travel, more. What's the one thing you'd like to make more of going forward in your life?
if I could do anyone, well, it's make more time with my family. There's nobody that ever gets to the end of their career and says, or on their deathbed said, I wish I'd spent more time at work.
Yeah.
So make more time with my family, make it meaningful time. So my
can
wife
you
and
do
I,
that?
we visit our kids routinely in Texas. So we get back there at least a couple of times a year to do that. You met my wife before.
Oh,
My
yeah,
wife is
yeah.
an incredible person. She tells me every day how incredible she
Yeah,
is.
well, you overmarried.
Yeah, I think we both did because I know your wife as well, Coral.
Yeah.
But I don't want to make this sound like I don't have a life, but when I'm not at work, my wife and I are inseparable. We're always together.
That's great.
And it's because she's my best friend, and I enjoy spending every moment with her. And so to be, if I'm not here, we could probably have one car. We're always together. This whole weekend we were together the entire time. We're not apart from each other, other than when I got a haircut. But other than that, we are always together.
awesome.
So I think, I don't golf, and it's not because I don't golf. I never have. I just don't want to be away from my family for periods of time.
5 hours on a Saturday, yeah.
Well, I love watching golf. I'll watch golf on TV at times, but when my wife left, when we had our grandson 5 months ago in February, and my wife traveled back to be with them for 2 months. She was back in Texas with our daughter, our son-in-law, and our newest addition to our family. Within about 48 hours, I was miserable. I was alone in the house.
Yeah.
She took the dog too, so I had
know,
nobody with
I
me.
know.
But I called her and I said, "This is miserable. I don't ever want to be alone. It's just not. It's not fun. Even though we may be in the home doing different things, just the fact that we're both there, walking around each other.
Makes it feel like home.
Yeah, it's home. It's where
It
you
was
want to
really
be.
crazy that you're saying this because I had this conversation with Coral yesterday, in fact. I said, when you're not here, I'm lonely in the house.
Yeah.
And we've got 2 dogs, but they're doing their thing. I said, so we're always doing everything together. We'll play pickleball together. We'll play golf together. We'll travel together. We were like you in Maryland. We do everything together.
I'm going to tell you something that's really, I think, good story about my wife and her love for what we do. When I was coming up through the agency, I'm on my 36th year, but I always thought I was doing my family a service by not bringing my work home. And obviously you can't bring the ugliness of this profession home on a regular basis. But I really walled off this profession from my family. And it wasn't until I was being promoted, there's promotional ceremonies to the undersheriff is the second highest command in the department, just below the sheriff. And Sandra Hutchins at the time, back in 2015, I'm getting promoted. And that time I brought my family to that promotional ceremony. And I never done that before with all the other things that I did. I always felt like I was saving them from some of the ugliness that I get exposed to every day. And my wife said it best. She goes, I knew what happened that day. I walked in. I think up to that point, my wife just thought I was going to a job. I'd go to work, I'd come home. And she didn't really, because I didn't share the things that I would go through every day. And she was in this promotional ceremony. I'm talking about this department, this organization, the people there, and how much I love them and what they do. And I think she saw for the first time, after doing this job for 25, 26 years, she saw the family that I go to every day.
Yeah.
And she saw it through a different lens. And then obviously years later, I ran for office, and she was like, no, you have to be more present. She gave her time up for me to be more present. We talk all the time now about the things we're doing in the organization, how important it is. She's more popular in the department than I think I am. She shows up, they know who she is, and she's very engaged. But she's engaged in a different way because she likes the people part of it. She didn't want to get in the budget and programs.
She supported you all through the elections.
She's been great, but she also was very, very cautious. She'd tell me, I have a lot of events when you're running for public office. You
Yeah.
have, a breakfast, a lunch, a dinner,
Every
weekend
day.
events. Every day you're doing something to try to outreach to people. And she would tell me, she goes, if you ask me to come, I will. She says, I'll come to any event you invite me to. But if you invite me to a stinker event and I don't like it, I'm going to boycott you for a month. So I had to be very cautious about which ones I would invite her to go to. But what I loved about her is she's not political. She would go to she'd meet people.
She's not at all.
And she would be talking to, Coral. She'd walk up and she would say, oh, that's a nice purse. Or, I like your, she'd just have a conversation. Yeah. And over about 2 or 3 minutes, the other person would say, and who are you here with? And she'd go, oh, Don's my husband. Oh, the candidate? And then I get these phone calls over the next week. Hey, we want to go to dinner with you and your wife. My wife loved your wife because she wasn't that in your face. Here's a yard sign and brochure. She just was, that's not her gig. She would just go and meet people and talk to them.
Well, tell Marilyn, Coral, and I send our love to you.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for being
same here. Tell Coral I said hello.
I will. Thank you for what you're doing for the county.
Thank you. It's I feel blessed. I feel blessed to be able to be in this position.
All right. Have a great day.
You too. Take care.
Thanks.